All right. Here we go. Monday night. I am battling a cold, but I have so much fun stuff to do tonight that, I just heard a voice, Brittany. Hopefully we're okay.
I think you're okay.
Okay. Now tonight, or last week, I think it was Friday, I probably sent a couple of things that I really wanted you folks to read before tonight. Now, one of them, obviously, is what I'm going to be covering over the course of the week, which is protection of industrial property. Industrial property is you. But I found something really interesting online, and somebody sent it to me. No, actually, they didn't send it to me. They sent something that led me to something that led me to this. And this is an old writing by Alfred Adask, and he's probably one of the brighter guys out there that I've ever read. But the article is called My Evil Twin, and I've never read anything closer to the idea. Now, Alfred has written so many great things, I think that it'd be smart just to go back through and find everything. Just Google him and look for his articles. But this evil twin thing, where he brings up the idea of the evil twin being a trust, and that's exactly what it is. But a trust has to be founded upon something, some piece of property, and that's what the afterbirth is. So he couldn't actually he couldn't nail it. But see, the trust that he's describing is the trust that exists as long as there is multiple claimants or multiple owners to your life. The moment you shut down all the possibilities of other claimants, then that trust disappears, and now your life is your life solely. And that's the whole idea, is that there's a lot of people out there that are really discussing the idea of trust and things like that. They got to realize that unless they're willing to give up their life, unless they're willing to share their life, which doesn't make any sense to me, but and I don't mean that in a negative way, but again, if I give you everything, or if everything is taken from me, then I can't even send my own kids to college. I may not be able to feed my family. I'm going to end up being a beggar even though I'm a producer. And then I have to ask for my own money back through the benevolence of some society or some institution or some church. They're going to have to give me back what was already mine. I have to go bend the knee to these people, beg for my own stuff back so I can send my kids to college, even though I earned the money that they have in their possession through some ridiculous trust. So Alfred wrote this article, My Evil Twin. It's probably the best article I've ever seen. And if you'll attach his idea of the trust to the foundational material, the very substance of the trust, which is your DNA. The very DNA that Mandel House wrote about or spoke about around 1920 with Woodrow Wilson. In other words, biological property. We're going to use biological property. That's what we're going to do against the American people. That's what they've done. So they've created a trust, this evil twin, and it does exist until you pull it all out of their claiming their position. Another book that I really love, it's actually one of my favorites. Brittany and I talked about favorite books today, and I'm reading one right now that I go back and read all the time, by Edward Bellamy. Now, if you recognize the name Bellamy, it's probably because his brother, I believe, wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. So now you already know where his family's allegiance was, in the Progressives. But anyway, this book is called Looking Backward, and it's by Edward Bellamy. And it's an incredible book because it's probably the best book. It's written in the 1800s, late 1800s. But what it was is this gentleman woke up in the year 2000. He went to bed one night in 1887 or something like that, and then he woke up the next day in the year 2000. Of course, it wasn't the next day. 113 years had passed. But the book is about basically the social ideas over those 113 years that changed. And so the whole book is about this new world, this idea. And it's one of the best books I've ever read that discusses capital and labor and stuff like that in a very, very not only educational way, but inspiring. And I'm not saying that I agree with everything in the book. I'm just saying it's a really fun read. It's only a couple hundred pages. But man, oh man, entire clubs sprang up all over the country and trying to get this idea out there amongst the masses. But I think that a lot of it actually was put in place, and I think they're still working towards it. But it's one of the best books I've ever read regarding this stuff, and it's called Looking Backward, 2000-1887 by Edward Bellamy. What else did I want to cover before we get into the industrial property? Oh, the recording that I did on Saturday morning with Joseph. That recording was off the cuff like every call I do with Joseph. And for me, it's my place to actually enjoy. I mean, if you notice, if you've listened to it, number one, you're going to hear a lot of expletives, which is me cutting loose. But the other thing is that you're going to see a lot of ideas actually for the first time. You're going to hear them for the first time on those calls. If you're a member of XYZ, you probably listen to a lot of the Joseph calls. And there's a lot of ideas that get expressed in those private calls because it's a free-flowing call. There's nothing about it. I mean, I love talking to Joseph specifically for the reasons that he brings so much to the table. And he might say one thing that sparks an entire direction. So I'm just going to say that, you listen to that call, and again, if you're offended by my language, that's too bad. Because you're at this point, you got to realize you can no longer shoot the messenger if you want to know the message. And the reality is I listen to a lot of real dumb fucks. There you go. I listen to a lot of people I absolutely can't stand, and I have over the years. But they're saying something important. So I can look beyond the messenger and take the message and go, okay, I need this information. And even though I don't like the guy, and that's typically what it was for me, is I couldn't stand the guy that was speaking. But even though I didn't like the guy, I loved what he was saying. So I always had the ability to look beyond the moron or the putz that was speaking. So finally, and hopefully you're doing that with me, you're looking beyond the moron or the putz that is speaking. So without further ado, this is my favorite week, people. And, as shitty as I feel right now, I'm getting excited because I already know where I'm going. I'm going into a document that when I found it, it laid out exactly what I was looking for as far as my property. And they created something back in 1883, or they gave it a definition in 1883. And once they defined it, they laid claim to it. And that's what we're going to do for the next couple of days. By the way, this document is going to sprout a lot of great ideas. And this is going to be the one thing that ties a lot of the foundational, the DNA, the property issues. Again, what are we doing? We're trying to lay claim to our lives. And by doing that, we eliminate all the preposterous claims, trusts, equitable positions that don't exist in reality. That's what we're trying to do. And remember that the only two questions you have to ask yourself is whose property is it and who can prove it. And once those two positions are known, it's over. All the grief, all the 14th Amendment citizen, that's the problem, Kurt, we have to expatriate. Well, we don't. What we have to do is we have to get home, and the only way we can get back to the United States of America is by claiming the position of the birth character that arrived, in my case, on September 19th, 1960 at 3:50 a.m. Anno Domini Gregorian. That's what I need to do. I need to find my way back. I think that was Jefferson Starship. Find my way back. Anyway, protection of industrial property. I hope you printed this. I hope it's in front of you. By the way, you're going to need your Black's Law tonight. What I did last Wednesday before I fell asleep in front of the fireplace on Thursday after the funeral, I laid out a way for you to understand or you to learn and find the story behind the words, find the story behind their claim. And I'm going to be using Black tonight specifically with protection of industrial property. And it's going to be fun. So here we go. Protection of industrial property. This is the convention signed at The Hague, November 6, 1925. Man, I tell you what, a lot of things happened in 1925 or right around there. It says the Convention of Union of Paris of March 20th, 1883 for the protection of industrial property revised at Brussels December 14th, 1900, at Washington June 2nd, 1911, and at The Hague, November 6, 1925. Now, it does say, signed at The Hague, November 6, 1925, the Senate advice and consent to ratification on the 16th of December. The Senate 1930. Ratified by the President of the United States, December 27th, 1930. Ratification of the United States deposited at Bern, that's Bern, Switzerland, January 22nd, 1931. Boy, it seems like it's all just in time for these birth records to come out. Notification of the United States deposit given by Switzerland to other parties, February 6, 1931. Entered into force, June 1st, 1928, for the United States, March 6, 1931. Proclaimed by the President of the United States, March 6, 1931. Look at that. Is today March 6th? It sure is. It's the day before my dad's birthday. My dad was actually born 1938, so it looks like 7 years after this, March 6th, almost to the day. Replaced by convention June 2nd, 1934 and October 31st, 1958, as between contracting parties to the latter convention. So they're looking at this as a treaty. Okay. I want you to, I know you've already read this. I'm not going to read it, but I do want to point out that the very first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a third pages, 5 and a third pages are showing the royalty who have signed off on this convention. We're talking about everybody, people. All the heavy hitters in the world, anybody, I'm talking first world stuff here, second world stuff, third world stuff, it doesn't matter. The entire, anybody that was productive at all and has been productive has signed off on this. So let's get into the actual document. The very first article is the, as soon as I read it, I knew I found my treasure trove. I found my treasure trove. Because it gave me the very term I was looking for the last, at that point in time, you figure 7 years. I never knew exactly what the term was going to be. I had no idea. And because I wasn't looking for something specific, I wasn't wearing colored glasses because of a belief system, a prior belief system. I wasn't able to not see what was in front of me. I didn't have to put on any weird-ass decoded glasses that came out of a Captain Crunch box. You know, red or blue. That's the problem with belief systems. When you have a belief system, you're going to be blinded to what's right in front of you. Blinded. Article 1. The contracting countries constitute themselves into a union for the protection of industrial property. Protection. I'm not going to go there yet. I'm going to go ahead and finish reading this paragraph, or Article 1. It says the scope of the protection of industrial property includes, by the way, I want you to think of everybody chasing all these ideas. Patents, trademarks, copyrights, everything, because that's what this is. This is everything. I don't care if you're talking about the 1790 Copyright Act of Congress. I don't give a shit. It's all right here under the term industrial property. The scope of the protection of industrial property includes patents, utility models, industrial designs and models, trademarks, commercial names, and indications of origin or appellations of origin, as well as the repression of unfair competition. Antitrust. Industrial property is to be understood in the broadest meaning and is to be applied not only to industry and commerce as such, but likewise to agricultural industries such as wine, grain, tobacco leaves, fruit, usufruct, fruit, seeds, seeds and eggs, fruit, cattle, etc. And extractive industries, minerals, mineral waters, etc. You know, like salt of the earth. Oh, I don't know. Have you heard that term before? Salt of the earth. Oh, aren't they discussing a man or a woman at that point? Yeah, they are. The term patents includes the various types of industrial patents granted by the laws of the contracting countries, such as patents of importation, improvement patents, patents and certificates of addition, when something is added to something else, something that already existed. Okay, so the best place I think we should start is the very word industrial property. Industrial property. That, for me, that was it. Found it. I found it. Okay. So, page 698, Black's Law, 5th edition. Industry. any department or branch of art, occupation, or business conducted as a means of livelihood or for profit, especially one which employs much labor and capital and is a distinct branch of trade. Just like I did with Landmark the other night, I want you to look at this industry. I mean, any department or branch of art, department. Can you think of words that have department attached to it? Yeah, they're all in the federal government, aren't they? Any department or branch of art. Right off the bat, when I hear branch, I think of tree. And when I think of tree, I think of family tree. I'm going to go to the word branch. Right off the bat, that's where I'm going. Branch, page 170. Lower left, it says, an offshoot, lateral extension, or subdivision. Any member or part of a body, executive branch of government, or system, a department, a division, office, or other unit of business located at a different location from main office or headquarters. I'm going to break that down without really doing too much. I think you should be able to start seeing these words. When you know what the birth product was, when you know that there are three things that came out of mother, out of her womb, baby, there's one thing right there. These are all lateral to each other, by the way. One comes out first, that's baby, firstborn, and then comes out this second puddle of muck, this afterbirth material. And within the afterbirth material, there are two different elements. One is fetal tissue, which is identical to baby, and one is maternal tissue, which has no biological father and belongs wholly to mother. So, and then of course there's a single title over the top of those two things that come out in the afterbirth. There's your potentially split title. You have fetal tissue under Curtis Richard Kallenbach, and you have maternal tissue under Curtis Richard Kallenbach. The fetal tissue is identical to baby. So when baby does what is required of him to do and lays claim to this property, then the title goes to baby, because what does Sedeke Vi 1666 say? It says when a man proves life, he's revested with his title. If the man does not do a Minnesota Rule 220 and claim his life, then the other property, the maternal afterbirth, falls to the unclaimed property, which is called res nullius, no owner, and that goes into a trust. You can see what the problem is here, but look at the word branch. And an offshoot, lateral extension, or subdivision. Is not the fetal tissue a subdivision of me? Is not the chorion, i.e. fetal tissue, that's a subdivision of me? Does it come from me? Is it my DNA? Yeah, it might be external to me, but it is a piece of me. Look what it also says. Any member or part of a body. Now, they like to bring up all kinds of smoke and mirrors. It says any member or part of a body. But then they say, e.g. an executive branch of government. They're trying to get you to think of something other than what they're using. Any member or part of a body. Now, the chorion, i.e. fetal tissue of the afterbirth, is a member of my body. It's a member. It's actually, when I claim it, I give it life, because it's my DNA is alive. So when I lay claim to this position, the lesser, is pulled into the greater, and I give it life. And again, Sedeke Vi says when a man proves life, he's revested with his title, and the title is what? Curtis Richard Kallenbach, first, middle, last. But the other stuff is also a part of mother's property. It's part, particular, soul. It's all the words that mean separation of mother as well. Or system, a department, division, office, or other unit of business located at a different location from the main office or headquarters. 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 That sounds like the chief in his office. Somebody that is actually in charge of something, like a father would be over his family within that branch. What does it say here? Oh, a branch of a family stock is a group of persons related by descent from a common ancestor. Huh, could that be father? Is father the head of the family? Where he would be at the headquarters, right? I'm just trying to expand some minds here. Headquarters, that's where father is. He's the one that is ruler. In fact, when the girls were over this weekend, when the grandkids were over, Katie always jokingly says, "Grandpa rules." Grandpa rules. Yes, I do. Ancestor, and related to the main stock by the fact that the common ancestor descends from the original founder or progenitor. That is Dad. The original founder. That's the name. That's Dad. Remember, Mom cannot produce a baby. No offense, ladies, Mom cannot produce a baby. On her own, she produces waste material. Because that's what the maternal afterbirth is. It's waste material. But with Dad, along with Dad, Mom produces a child. So the combination of Mom and Dad is what produces the child. You need both. Mom cannot make a baby on her own. Although legally, through a legal term called born alive, they absolutely say that everything that comes out of mother's womb is a legal person. So they give potential to the maternal afterbirth. They give potential to it. So if I don't make a claim upon my life through Minnesota Rule 220, then all of the afterbirth falls as res nullius or unclaimed property. That's how the trust is established. The trust only exists when a man has yet to claim his life. What is that called? I went over that the other day, last week. It's called expilatio. Now, this is one that's not on my list tonight, but I'm going to go over it again. Expilatio. I can hear a bunch of guys giggling out there because it sounds like something else. Expilatio. Oh, there it is. And I went over this, I think, it must have been last week at some point. Okay. Expilatio. In the civil law, the offense of unlawfully appropriating goods belonging to a succession. Remember, the succession is father to son, father to son, father to son, father to son. That's the succession. In other words, last name, last name, last name, last name. Legitimate son, legitimate son, legitimate son, legitimate son. Mother's afterbirth material is not father's son. It's illegitimate material, albeit pure as the driven snow, because there's no biological man in there. His DNA is not in there to mess it up. So what is that? That's the Lamb of God. That's the sacrificial lamb. Let it be. It is not technically theft because such property no longer belongs to the decedent nor to the heir, since the latter has not yet taken possession. You do hear that. In other words, the succession has not been granted to the heir because he has yet to take possession. Since in common law, the grant of letters testamentary or letters of administration relates back to the time of the death of the testator or intestate, so that the property of the estate is vested in an executor or administrator from that period. Why? Because nobody went back and claimed that point in time. In other words, you never began your life. Again, Pink Floyd says, you missed the starting gun. Until you use Minnesota Rule 220, you're not alive. You're frozen in time. All the way back at the beginning. You're reliving the same day over and over. Happy birthday. By the way, if you look up cake, birthday cake, if you look up cake, you will realize that the placenta is called flat cake. The placenta is a birthday cake. And again, what's the old adage? You can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't actually have the afterbirth or the birthday cake and consume it. You can't do it. Wow. Didn't think I'd have this much energy. We're still on industrial property. In fact, industrial, any department or branch of art, occupation, or business. Those three things, art, occupation, or business. Industry, art, occupation, or business. Let's go to occupation real quick. Occupation. I think a lot of people, they think, and again, I would have been one of these people anyway, but occupation or any other word, you think you know what it means. Occupy Wall Street. What the hell actually occupies Wall Street? Stocks, bonds, shares. I believe that the name is already occupied by Wall Street. Occupant, occupation, occupancy, occupation, possession, control, tenure, use. Occupation is use. If you're not using something, they're saying you're not occupying it. And when we're done with this document, you're going to know that abuse, A-B-U-S-E, abuse, is non-use. And so when you're abusing a piece of property, it means that you're not using it. And if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So occupy is possession. It's use. The act or process by which real property is possessed and enjoyed, where a person exercises physical control over land. Physical control over land. If you do not do a Minnesota Rule 220 claim upon that point in time and space called birth record, the chorion, i.e. fetal tissue, goes with the abandoned property. And you, because it's your DNA, because it's an exact duplicate, or the chorion is a sample of your DNA. By you abandoning the sample, you have given them the ability to make a claim upon your DNA. Is it slavery at that point? Oh, no. Oh, no. It might be adverse possession. It might be all kinds of things. Adverse possession. Isn't that a funny idea? Adverse possession. Exorcist was about possession. If the church possesses the deed to your land, is that any different than having a claim upon your body or having their ideas forced into you, just like in the movie The Exorcist, a demon? Occupation, that which principally takes up one's time, thought, and energies, especially one's regular business or employment. Does your physical body take up your time, your thoughts, your energies? It damn well better. And that's what I'm getting at with everything that we're talking about. Whose property is it and who can prove it? The moment you lay claim to this chorion position, the afterbirth chorion, is the moment you get your life back. And the only way to do that, again, is through Minnesota Rule 220. And I'll go over that again soon. That which principally takes up one's time, thought, and energies, especially one's regular business or employment, also whatever one follows as the means of making a livelihood. This is interesting because earlier they talked about a livelihood or profit. They're not going to tax anything when it comes to livelihood. Particular business, profession, trade, or calling, which engages individuals' time and efforts. Calling. Employment in which one regularly engages, or vocation of his life. What is a vocation? Vocation. But it says his life. See, now they're not even saying business, they're saying a vocation of his life. Vocation. Page 1411, vocation. One's regular calling or business. One's occupation or profession. Occupation again. The activity on which one spends major portion of his time, and out of which he makes his living. The major. Again, age of majority. What is the majority? I went over this with a couple of guys over the last couple of days. Majority, major. Remember, there are three positions at the birth: baby, and then the afterbirth. But the afterbirth subdivided into two. So there are three positions: baby, chorion or fetal tissue, and mother's tissue. Three different positions, each having a third of the birth. A third. Baby has 33 1/3. Chorion has 33 1/3. Mother's or maternal afterbirth has 33 1/3. They all have 33 1/3% claim upon that birth moment or that birth record. If I claim the chorion, I have 66 2/3%. That's the majority. Funny thing is there's still a trust, because if I don't lay claim to mother's property in the right way, there's still a third sitting out there in a trust. The moment I lay claim to that final third is the moment the trust disappears. I'm wondering if anybody can guess what that last third is called. I hear somebody. Yeah, you're right. The last third is the vessel or ship of state that you get through the assumed name. That's the waste material, the ship, the vessel, the mothership that has the title, all caps, Curtis Richard Kallenbach. And when I do an assumed name and grab up that ship's name, I now have 100% of the birth claim. 100%. And there is no trust. The moment I do that, so Minnesota Rule 220 ties me to the chorion, so now I am the age of majority. I now have all the claim to my body and my life. And of course, Seneca Vide says when a man proves life, he's revested with his title. What is the title? The title is upper and lowercase Curtis Richard Kallenbach. That's the title. But what about the ship of state? What about the commercial vessel that was generated off of the maternal afterbirth that secures that ship, that is held on deposit? That is all caps, birth certificate name, Curtis Richard Kallenbach. When I do an assumed name on that vessel, I now have 66 2/3% of the DNA on my side, in other words, the living claim, and I also have the deposit that created the trust account, my mother's material, in my possession as well, or under my control. I now control 100% of what would normally have been a trust. And as soon as I lay control to 100% and possess the name through an assumed name certificate, I now have eliminated the trust itself, because I control all parts of it. And possessed, by the way. Industrial property. Capital and labor. Here we go. Let's keep going. So vocation, it's funny when you read these things and it says makes a living, they're speaking specifically about you taking care of you. They're not talking about a business that is taxable. They're talking about a man. It's funny when they talk about a man too. Typically they don't use the word man, but they certainly don't use person. It says one's regular calling, the activity on which one. Why one? Because there's no trust when there's one. There's no equity when there's one. Vocation. Vocatio in jus. Latin, a summoning to court. In the earlier practice of the Roman law, by the way, before I go into this, the word civil. Was the word civil ever used before the Civil War? Was there civil law before the Civil War? Just a question. I bet there wasn't. So anybody that believes there's a civil flag that is true, and I'm not getting on anybody's case, I'm just saying that before the Civil War, was there a civil flag? Was there the word civil anywhere to be found? Did they use the word civil in the Constitution? I don't know that there was that word in use prior to the Civil Roman War. We got to be careful with our belief systems, people. I don't claim anything that has anything to do with civil rights. Civil rights are a different set. Now, if I control the very thing that has the civil rights and there's no administrative process over those civil rights, that's a different story. But like it says, when they're talking about the man or his family under the word branch, headquarters, the head of state, the executive branch is the head. The mind is your government. Unless, of course, you abdicate your government and decide that some religion or some other government is going to rule over your body, which is not what they're saying you should do. The Declaration of Independence is not about that. Coffee feels good on my throat. Industry. Again, any department or branch of art, occupation, or business conducted as a means of livelihood or for profit, especially one which employs much labor and capital. By the way, that's everything. Labor and capital. So industrial property is your private labor and capital. What is that? That's everything that you can produce with your physical existence. So you better damn well have a right to your physical existence, because if you don't have a right to your physical existence, you don't have a right to the fruit of the physical existence, which is your capital and labor. If you do not claim your right to your life, in other words, if the Seneca Vai says when a man proves life, he's revested with his title. And when you are revested with that title, you have the capital and labor of your life under your control, in your possession, entitled to all the fruits of your own labor, which is not taxable, by the way. Why is your stuff taxable? Because it's not your stuff. Everything you create, everything you do is under administrative process. You have yet to lay claim to it. You're missing, presumed dead, until you're not. Just like expilatio says, until you go and lay claim to this, it's in somebody else's possession. It even says administrative, executor. It's not you. There's nothing wrong in these courts. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get rid of those ideas, but the courts aren't even corrupt. Kurt, God, I can't believe you're saying that. The courts are not corrupt. They're following rules to the T. It feels like corruption because they can't make any other decisions. You're not here. You're not here. Trump is saying it. Aliens. That's what everybody is. They're aliens. Because they haven't laid claim to that point in space when they arrived on the county. The county's within Illinois, in my case, and Illinois is within the Union. At that point, I have a legitimate stake in the United States of America. Article 4 citizenry protects my private property at that point. Let's go to another word. I want to do labor and capital. But when Mom's in the hospital, by the way, what do they call that? I mean, does Mom go into labor? Does she not produce through labor? Is it possible that the product that pops out between her legs, including maybe not baby, but certainly the left behind material, the product that comes out that they call born alive, maybe that product is laid claim through labor or a labor union? And capital, the word cap, hat, head, top. thought, idea, intellectual property. All right, let's see. Industrium per, right above an industry. A qualified property in animals may be acquired for industrium, i.e. by a man's reclaiming and making them tame by art, industry, and education. You do know that the left behind material is considered fish under the wildlife, the game wardens. It's product of the sea. Or that an unclaimed chorion is no different than an animal because it doesn't have consciousness. It's actually material. Remember, man. Man is basically an animal in the world of nature, but he has a higher order of consciousness. And that's the only thing that separates him from the animal. If he doesn't have the higher order of consciousness, he's no better than an animal. When I break out Gilbert's on property next week, or the week after, maybe even this week, depending on how far I get, you're going to see that this is a catch and release. This is a giant field, a hunting grounds for cops. And I'm not talking about shooting. I'm talking about hunting grounds. It's a fishery, a fish hatchery. Everything they're doing is catch and release. Everything they're doing is they're catching wild animals. If you read this stuff, you're not going to believe what they're treating us like animals because we have yet to claim the higher order. We're not considered man. I think Alfred Adatsky even found something in the record where it says man and other animals. Other animals. Man and other animals. Okay, by a man's reclaiming and making them tame by art, industry, or education. Reclamation. Reclamation. If I find a piece of clay and I turn it into something, art. It's just a pile of muck here, and I turn it into an incredible bowl. It's a piece of art now. And of course, about 5 or 6 years ago, I found in an old Catholic dictionary that the word child was considered Christian art. So they can take this other material and turn it into anything they want by giving it a label. Born alive. They can turn it into anything they want. The left behind material can become anything they want it to be. You can't, because you're outside of the scope of that authority. But the material left behind can get a label, any label they want to place on it, like taxpayer. Citizen. Or by so confining them within his own immediate power that they cannot escape and use their natural liberty. That's industrium per, where it says, a man's reclaiming and making them tame, animals, by art, industry, and education. Or by so confining them within his own immediate power that they cannot escape and use their natural liberty. That's called domestication. It's funny, when you're a kid, you believe all kinds of stuff like sea monkeys, and, you really don't want to buy those because brine shrimp, you just can't see them. But you were led to believe they look like these little monkeys, floating around in the water. They don't. I don't even know why I brought that up. I was going somewhere with it, but I got all caught up in the sea monkeys and how disgusted I was when I got that little packet of dry stuff and put it in the water. Domestication. Domesticate. How do you train a flea? You put a top over it, and it keeps hitting its head. It keeps bouncing off the top, and eventually it quits jumping that high. It jumps only as high as the top was. Now you can take the top off, and the flea won't jump out. It's kind of like us. It's kind of like us. In fact, there's even something called the Stockholm Syndrome where the captor falls in love with the one holding them in prison. Or the captive, I should say. Anyway, industrial relations. Term includes all phases of relations between employer and employee, including collective bargaining, safety, employee benefits, etc. It's funny how somebody like Obama can force an insurance policy on an entire nation. See, when you start asking the right questions, that's not even a possibility on a free man. Or not, I wouldn't even use the word free man, but on a man. So how in the world can they force insurance into the hands of somebody? Well, you have to be party to something that you don't know you're party to. In order for that to actually apply to you, you have to be associated with something you just don't know exists. Just like me being tased. I mean, did it seem unlawful? Yeah, at every level. Did it seem like a man should be able to electrocute another man and get away with it? No. But they weren't electrocuting another man. They were subduing a farm animal, a domesticated farm animal. Industrial goods. Goods which are destined and designed to produce other goods, as contrasted with consumer goods. Goods which are destined to produce other goods. In other words, it doesn't go out to the consumer to be used up. It's something that actually creates or generates other things. Do we do that? Do we generate other things? More property? I guess I can go to goods real quick. Let me go to goods real quick. Page 624. Goods. 624, goods. The term of variable content and meaning. It may include every species of personal property, or it may be given a very restricted meaning. I like when they do that. Talk about covering a lot of ground. Items of merchandise, supplies, raw materials. Raw materials. You're going to see that in here. By the way, is your DNA the raw material of your life? You better believe it is. Raw materials or finished goods. Sometimes the meaning of goods is extended to include all tangible items, as in the phrase goods and services. All things including specially manufactured goods, which are movable at the time of identification to the contract for sale, other than the money in which the price is to be paid, investment securities, and things in action. Also includes the unborn of animals. Goods. Also includes the unborn of animals and growing crops and other identified things attached to realty as fixtures, like a name. A name is a fixture. It's an appurtenance. It's attached. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is attached to the left behind material, the afterbirth. It's not attached to baby, it's attached to what's left behind. When is the only time in your life that you will be stationary, when you will be fixed? When is the only time ever in your life or in a man's life that he is in a fixed position? Well, it's at the end of his life. It's when he's dead. It's the only time. Because you're moving with every breath. Every breath you take, inspire. Every breath you inspire is motion. It's life. And the last breath, obviously, you take will be an expire. And then you'll be fixed. You'll be in a singular position. Not you'll be gone. But the physical body, the DNA, the substance itself, the raw materials will actually be burned, placed in the ground or something, but it'll never move again. It'll be fixed. Industry. Industrial goods, which are destined and designed to produce other goods. Yep. As contrasted with consumer goods. In other words, consumer goods do not produce anything. They are an end product that gets used up and thrown away or whatever, but goods, they can produce other goods. It sounds like babies and things to me. Afterbirth, other treasure troves. And then there's industrial disease. Who was it what song that, there was actually a song called Industrial Disease. Who was it, Mark Knopfler? What was that, Dire Straits actually did a song. I thought, what the hell is industrial disease? You know, why would anybody even be singing about that? Really? Shouldn't you be chasing chicks and things like that? I mean, you're in a rock band, dude. I mean, why are you talking about industrial disease? Maybe it's because the people that make sure their ideas get out there are the ones that create these songs and movies and things like that. Maybe Mark Knopfler was handed that song. I don't know. I'm not saying he didn't write it, but I'm just saying that some of these songs are so weird to me that I can't believe that some 20-year-old, 25-year-old kid is scribbling those words on a piece of paper. Doesn't make any sense to me at 25. Industrial disease. In law of workers' compensation, physical disorder which is caused by or is incident to particular occupation. Is the chorion that has the same DNA as you, is it possible that version of you, mini-me, that version of you could be considered, I don't know, having a physical disorder? Or maybe the maternal afterbirth? That's it can't get any worse than that. That's going nowhere. That can't even be claimed by anybody because it's truly waste matter. Unless, of course, mother claims it, because it is part of her. Remember that the birth process only has two potential claimants. Out of all the material that's produced in your mother's womb, there's only two potential claimants, and that's baby. Baby claims his own life, and he also, by claiming his own life, he claims the chorion, which is the exact duplicate of his DNA. So when baby claims his life, he claims the chorion. The only other claimant to that material, that afterbirth material, that born alive material, is mother. What's the likelihood she's going to claim it? I mean, really claim it. Not do something stupid like eat it. Remember, animals eat their afterbirth. Humans do not, or people do not, although they're led to believe that they did at some point, but they didn't. You know, again, it's really scary to think that we can be led to the edge of the cliff and we can actually be led to believe that it'd be good for us to jump. And we do. I feel sad for the women that buy into that stuff, and if I told them what I found over the years, that eating the afterbirth is truly for the animals. Back to Article 1. No, you know what? I haven't finished with labor and capital, which is right under industry still. So I'm going to go to labor. Labor. Let's see. Gosh, I hope I can get through the first paragraph tonight. Just kidding. Labor. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to read all of labor, but I think it's important that I at least get it in there. Labor. Oh, I can read this. Page 786. Work, toil, service, mental or physical exertion. Term normally refers to work for wages as opposed to work for profit. Though the word is sometimes construed to mean service rendered or part played in production of wealth. What? A part played. A part. Not a role, a part played in production of wealth. Can you see any reason for that to be in there? A part played in the production of wealth. So when I go out there with my physical body as me, I am, the whole man, and go out and produce all kinds of things, through intellectual property claims and physical body, digging holes. I produce all kinds of stuff. But I never lay claim to my existence. So that little chorion that is nothing more than a sample of my DNA actually gets to lay claim through administrative process to everything that I do. That is obviously a part of me playing in the production of wealth. To who? Whatever I produce and it claims, it goes to whoever's administrating that process. That's how this is working, people. By not laying claim to the very thing that is left behind, everything you do is creating or generating wealth for those that are administrating this property. A part played in the production of wealth, labor. Could it be mom creating this thing through her labor? Is she generating this potential one man's trash is another man's treasure? Like Obama said way back, we all have a role to play. No, I prefer my reality. Includes superintendence or supervision of work. The term labor, as used in the Clayton Act, is not limited to the work of manual laborers or of mechanics, but comprises intellectual labor as well. Intellectual labor. That sounds like intellectual property. When mom puts pen to paper, I mean, when dad's in the hospital, he's just hanging around mom. He's not really doing a whole hell of a lot. Who fills out the paperwork in the hospital? Chances are it's probably mom. When they ask mom to put down the name of the future baby or the baby or whatever, it's probably mom's handwriting. That's the one that ends up as the informant on the birth record. So who ultimately is the creator of the intellectual production or property called Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the title? Do they give any credit to my father for that, even though my mom and dad probably chose it? Well, let's call him Kurt. You know what's funny is they wanted to call me Carl. But they probably called me Kurt because they knew how I would become or how I would be in the future. It was a joke. What's really funny is I was looking up the root to baby names and German names and things like that, and it's funny because Kurt actually comes from and actually has the same root as Conrad. Well, my middle brother's name is Conrad, so ultimately, if you go back far enough, we have the same name. Anyway, I was firstborn, which makes me the big brother, which makes me big brother, if you know where I'm going with that. Anyway, in other words, it comprises intellectual labor as well. In other words, intellectual property. A Spanish land measure. A Spanish land measure in use in Mexico and formerly in Texas, equivalent to 177.5 acres. You know what? I find a lot of weird things that have weird connections. There's a lot of reasons to pursue anything to do with Spain. When you see Spain pop up on something where you're looking into something, you should follow it to find out where it leads you. Where it leads you. Because the last week I'm going to have a lot of fun with you guys. I'm going to be showing you some really strange connections just for fun. I mean, I'll go over the documents that I got, but I really want you to see how fun this stuff can get and the fact that the joke is on us. The joke is on us. Okay. Labor. Again, I wanted to do capital and labor, so I need to do capital, but I also want to do this labor here said, what was the word that I wanted to get out of here? Intellectual. Let's go to intellectual again real quick. Intellectual, because intellectual property is, when Mom put pen to paper and created Curtis Richard Kallenbach, she created a title to a new storyline, a new character, a book. Intellectual property. Intellectual property. Okay. Oops. Actually, I know that it might be better, instead of going to intellectual property, to go to literary property, which is intellectual property. I'd rather go there. Let's go there. Literary. Sorry about that. Literary property. That's really when she put pen to paper. Again, literary property, you can't know enough about the literary aspect. Okay, literary property. Literary composition. An original result of mental production, developed in a series of written or printed words. A series, first, second, third word. A series, 1, 2, 3. First, middle, last. A series of words, developed in a series of written or printed words. Literary composition. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is a literary composition. In order. If it's not in that order, it's not the same composition. If it's out of order, it's out of order. You're out of order. Have anybody ever heard that in a courtroom? Arranged for an intelligent purpose. Intelligent purpose. In other words, it's intelligent design. In an orderly succession of expressive combinations. See literary work. Literary work is right at the top of the page, page 841. Under Copyright Act, literary works are works other than audiovisual works expressed in words, numbers, or other verbal or numerical symbols or indicia, regardless of the nature of the material object. Regardless of the nature of the material object. Such as books, periodicals, manuscripts. By the way, books, periodicals, and manuscripts are all important things. The phonorecords, film, tapes, discs, and cards in which they are embodied. In which they are embodied. Manuscripts. In which it is embodied. A manuscript, look it up. Manuscript is the story of your life. Literary property may be described as the right. This is the legal term, literary property. May be described as a right which entitles an author and his assigns. Okay, when Mom puts pen to paper, she's the author. Who is the assignee? If the name is intended for me, I'm supposed to get it. But if I don't claim that succession, if I don't claim that position, if I don't claim that record, it doesn't go to me. It becomes res nullius. No owner. And that's picked up through what? Expilatio. Somebody else gets in there and grabs it up before the true heir, which is the Roman Catholic Church, because they're going to take care of that lost, abandoned child of God. It says, and his assigns to all the use and profit of his composition. We already know what a composition is. It's an order or a series of printed words. A composition, Curtis Richard Kallenbach, is a composition to which no independent right is through any act or omission on his or their part. In other words, Mom or the assignee. It says, on his or their part, vested in another person. So it cannot be vested. Curtis Richard Kallenbach cannot be vested in anybody else. Anybody. That's why it sits there and waits for me to show up and claim it. It waits. It's waiting, and that's why it's in a trust. They don't care how long that it sits there, because all of the usufruct, all of the management fees go to the Bar Association. And remember that as long as that child is under the care of the church, all the productivity of that child goes to the church. Remember, the church wardens are entitled to everything that comes out of that character until that character is no longer under the dome or under the care of the church. Everything. Again, I struggle with people thinking that there's something out there at the end of this, because until you get your shit together and claim this, the rules have been laid down for 150, 200 years. As long as you fall under the care of the church, your shit goes to the church. So if you think that they're going to give you back anything, you better be prepared for a battle. The Roman Catholic Church and system does not have any intent to give anything back to you. You'll probably end up dead before you'll get anything. But you're not really, I mean, if you got your life back today, if everything from this moment forward was completely under your authority, isn't that enough? From this point forward, if you got everything that you ever did, because you were too stupid to do anything about it up till now, just like me, believing the lemming in front of you, yeah, we're all free. Ah, follow me. Literary property may be described as a right which entitles an author and his assigns to all the use and profit of his composition, to which no independent right is, through any act or omission on his or their part, vested in another person. It cannot ever be vested in somebody else. Curtis Richard Kallenbach will never be vested in anybody but me, but I have to do something to get it. He goes on to say, literary property is the exclusive right of owner to possess, use, and dispose of intellectual productions. The term denotes the corporal property in which an intellectual production is embodied. Oh my God. If I'm wearing the clothing of the character known as Curtis Richard Kallenbach, if I'm wearing that suit, that outfit, as long as I'm wearing that character, as long as I have those clothes on me, I'm subject to the author. But if the author has never claimed it, then I'm going to be subject to the administrators who have that title in their administrative possession. So as long as I'm wearing the character of Curtis Richard Kallenbach without claiming the Corian, without doing a Minnesota Rule 220, as long as I'm wearing the clothes of Curtis Richard Kallenbach, administrative process is going to bury me. Because an executor or an administrator has all the authority over that character, over that title, until somebody goes back. They're not vested with it. They can't lay claim to it, but they can certainly manage it. And until you have a way to prove that it's in your possession or it's under your authority, you have no proof. Whose is it and who can prove it? By the way, my anger is actually chasing away my headache. You're probably afraid. Literary property goes on to say, intellectual production is embodied, and it may consist of letters, lectures, sermons, or addresses. Do you live at 3320 Broadway, Rockford, Illinois? Literary property, addresses. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so I didn't go real deep into that stuff, but you got to know that industrial property. Wait a minute, I didn't do capital. Let me go to capital. Remember, industrial property is capital and labor. Capital. I'm going to just throw words out there. I'll read the first of the definitions, but I'm going to show you that if you don't understand the depth of capital, remember, industrial property is the capital and labor. I'm going to read Article 1 again, and then we're going to keep moving. Capital. Accumulated goods. Possessions and assets used for the production of profits and wealth. Let me ask you something. Accumulated goods. Is it possible for me to ever accumulate wealth the way the system's designed right now? Can I accumulate anything? Of course not. Because I don't have any right to any moment after today. As the living I am, as the baby without a name, without any claim to the timeline, without any claim to a point in time and space where I started, I have no claim but the present. No claim but the present. I go buy a house today, it's my house today. When I wake up tomorrow, that house goes into the trust. Because why? Because I don't have a claim to yesterday. I only have a claim to today. Until I claim the point where I began, which is the birth record itself, and there's only two potential claimants to that, and that's mom and baby. If it doesn't get claimed by either one ever, it stays in the administrative process forever. And then the administrators actually have the rights to administrate over all the property accumulated all the way up to today. They get to administrate over the entire timeline because all you get is today. Because you have yet to claim the beginning of the timeline. Remember the alpha and the omega. The alpha is the point of the beginning, which is truly the zygote, by the way, where the sperm fertilized mother's ovum. That's the actual alpha moment. It's funny because Brittany sent me a really cool YouTube that shows that when the sperm actually enters the ovum, there's a lightning flash. There's actually a chemical flash. If you look at a lot of movies like I do, it's funny that they always, the moment of creation is always a lightning bolt. And you know what? There's a flash when the sperm actually penetrates the ovum. There's a flash, a chemical flash, like a lightning bolt. Oh, okay, I'm way off targeting it. Again, so the administrators of the trust property administrate from the moment of your arrival here at the hospital all the way up to yesterday. I should say all the way up to today, because everything today belongs to me, but as soon as I go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow, it'll be today again, and whatever I did today becomes yesterday, and everything from yesterday all the way back to the first point in time and space of the arrival, that's all administrated over in the trust, because that's the story of my life. The title to that story is Curtis Richard Telemock, and they are administrating that story, that literary property. So can I accumulate wealth? Is it possible for me to even have what they're calling capital? Can I have capital if I can't accumulate anything? That Bill Gates, today, could he possibly lay claim to all the wealth or whatever of Microsoft if he can't lay claim to yesterday or the day before? Or the day before that, the day that he created Microsoft is in the trust. Can he actually lay claim to that if he has not yet laid claim to his own existence? You want to know why Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is created, or why it exists? Why is a man, seriously, that developed Microsoft involved in vaccines? It's because he didn't have an option. He didn't have an option. You want to live like a billionaire, Bill? You're going to do some dirty work for us. You're going to promote death. You're going to sell your soul. Capital, accumulated goods, possessions, accumulated possessions. Accumulated possessions. Do you think that those holding all the deeds to the land of your soul, i.e. Corion or afterbirth, do you think that that's wealth? You better believe it. Remember what I said about if you control the female side of the equation, the mitochondrial lineage of mother, remember everything comes out of mother's womb. If you lay claim to just that lineage, then you have laid claim to everything ever produced, because everything is produced through mother's womb, indirectly. Until you add father. Once you add father, you sever the lineage between the Roman Catholic claim and reality. Because they're claiming nonsense. They're claiming nonsense. They're claiming a part of the body. They're claiming waste material that happens to have the title of your life. Because you have yet to claim it. And expilatio kicks in and somebody else has administrative authority over it. Until you go back and claim it. And once you do, it's over. The whole world is free if they understood this shit. Capital. Accumulated goods, possessions, and assets. Do you think the movie Frozen Do you realize that your assets have been frozen in time? Your assets, they're in a trust. They're frozen until you get home. And the moment you get home, they're freed up. Whatever those are. I don't know. But I know at least my name or the title is one of those assets. And I know that everything that was ever generated under that title are assets. If I can lay claim to the title, I also lay claim to everything that's generated ever through that title. I don't know what that means, but it sure sounds like my stuff. Owner's equity in a business. Equity in owner's equity in a business. That's almost an oxymoron. Unless but let's be clear here. Oh my God. It says owners plural. It doesn't say owners singular, as in possessive. It says owners. So they're definitely talking in a plural fashion here, because there is no equity in a single owner. So if they were talking about owners, meaning singular equity, they wouldn't use the word equity. It would say owner of a business. But it says here owner's equity, but their owners is plural, because there is no equitable position in a single ownership, in a sole ownership. How many owners of your life should there be? Owner's equity in a business, there's plural owners there. What's the name of the business? The assumed name is Curtis Richard Kallenbach. How many potential owners have a claim on Curtis Richard Kallenbach? 2, me and my mom. But I believe my mom intended me to have that title. And when I do a Minnesota Rule 220, I prove life and I'm revested with the title. Which one's the title? Upper and lowercase Curtis Richard Kallenbach is the title. The ship that the state creates is the all caps ship. That's the title over the vessel, the maternal afterbirth. It is not over the chorion. What's on deposit? Did they deposit the chorion? Did they deposit your DNA? Maybe indirectly by depositing the afterbirth. But would they ever actually admit to that? No, because that would be an act of slavery. And certainly treason against the United States citizen, Article 4. It says, owner's equity in a business, often used equally correctly to mean the total assets of a business, sometimes used to mean capital assets. In accounting, the amount invested in a business. The amount invested in a business. In economic theory, there are several meanings. By the way, I'll be getting into a little more economics next week through what's called cultural property. It goes on to say capital may be used to mean capital goods. That is, the tools of production. The tools of production. The money available for investment or invested. The discounted value of the future income to be received from an investment. The real or money value of total assets. Real. Money or property used for the production of wealth. It always goes back to that. Money or property used for the production of wealth. If you don't have a right to your name, you produce nothing for yourself. No wealth. If you don't have a right to your physical body, there's no possible way for you to create or earn anything that you get to keep. It will be taxed because it falls under somebody else's administrative process. Capital. You can read the rest of capital. I don't want to go there because there's so many other things. Let me see. What does it say under Internal Revenue Code here? Capital, gains. By the way, when it's private property, is it subject to the IRS? I mean, put on your thinking caps. If it's private property, is it subject to the IRS? Is your private labor, is any of your private property taxable? I'm just going to tell you the answer is no. If private property is not taxable, then what is being taxed is not your property. It may be your property, but it might be in a trust. and is waiting to be claimed. The moment you claim it, it is pulled out of the trust, and now it becomes private property again, and now it's no longer taxable. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Nope. Damned if you stay asleep. Okay. Back to Article 1. The scope of protection of industrial property. Protection. I'm going to go to protection real quick. See, protection scares me. I mean, there could be insurance. That's a type of protection. Let's see, protection. Wow, I got a lot of scribbles on protection. Protection, in Old English law, a writ by which the king might, by special prerogative, privilege a defendant from all from all personal and many real suits for 1 year at a time. For 1 year at a time. A king, and no longer in respect of his being engaged in his service out of the realm. In former times, the name protection was also given to a certificate. Here we go. I'm going to be talking about this in a couple weeks. A certificate. In former times, the name protection was also given to a certificate, given to a sailor, to show that he was exempt from impressment into the Royal Navy. A sailor. We're going to be covering some of this stuff in a couple weeks. In mercantile law, the name of a document generally given by notaries public to sailors and other persons going abroad, in which it is certified that the bearer therein named is a citizen of the United States. By the way, for those of you that are running from citizen of the United States because of the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment was written when, like 1868? They were using the term citizen of the United States back in 1700s, 1802 in the congressional record. They talk about a citizen of the United States. 1802, 66 years before the 14th Amendment. Is it possible that the citizen of the United States is really that detrimental? Because the 14th Amendment certainly wasn't there in 1802. So, and by the way, it's spelled exactly the same. It looks exactly the same. Citizen of the United States. It's not the problem. The citizen of the United States is not the problem. It's the state wherein it resides. If it resides in the District of Columbia, that city-state, there's a problem. If it resides on the soil of Illinois, it's not a problem. Part of the Union. So again, we need to really start thinking clearly about this. But again, it says, named is a citizen of the United States. It says in public commercial law, this is under protection, by the way, a system by which a government imposes customs duties upon commodities of foreign origin or manufacture when imported into the country. And by the way, when we go over this stuff next week, you're going to see that by having this assumed name vessel under your control, you have a member ship that is duty-free. Duty-free. For the purpose of stimulating and developing the home production of the same or equivalent articles by discouraging the importation of foreign goods or by raising the price of foreign commodities to a point at which the home producers can successfully compete with them. The word success is always about the Father's name. It's a succession. Whenever you see the word success, you gotta go to Blacks and look it up, but it's always going to be a succession. A line of succession is from father to son, father to son, father to son. Without that succession, there's no inheritance. There's no name. Where there's no name, there's no claim. All these morons out there running from the name, the legal name is illegal to use. Then go without. Go without. You have no way to claim anything you do without that name. I'm not talking about the first, middle, last. I'm talking about your Father's name. We need to really be careful who we listen to. And I'm talking about me. Again, whenever I say go back and do your own due diligence, you're going to find the same shit that I found. This is not me. This is everything. Protective custody. This is back under protection. The condition of one who is held under force of law for his own protection. Does that sound like that birth certificated person? Held under force of law for his own protection. As in the case of a material witness whose safety is in jeopardy, or one who is drunk in public, though public drunkenness may not be a criminal offense. Drunk, by the way, means filled with spirits. Drunk, filled with spirits. But again, the condition of one who is held under force of law for his own protection. And protection again, the protection of an individual by government is on condition of his submission to the laws, and such submission, on the other hand, entitles the individual to the protection of the government. Sounds kind of reciprocal to me. Submission. An individual, by the way, when you learn what an individual name means, what is an individual? Go to legal name and look up individual. Let's do it right now. Screw it. Legal name. Because they actually identify an individual as something separate. Legal name. I have to be careful with this because it can get confusing. But it's short. So go to legal name, which is page 806. A legal name under common law consists of one Christian name and one surname. One. That's two names, right? Under common law consists of one Christian name and one surname, and the insertion, omission, or mistaken middle name or initial is immaterial. Why did they say middle name? Because they're identifying a position that does not exist in a real name. So they're actually saying, and the insertion, omission, or mistaken middle name or initial is immaterial. But they're saying that there is a middle name. So the legal name is a name that could potentially have a middle name because they're using the term middle name. If there is no potential for middle name, they would have not used that term. And it says, and the insertion, which is a middle name, it's placing a middle name in there, so it has one Christian name and one surname. There's the front, there's the back. And the insertion, omission, okay, there is one, omission, there isn't one, or mistake, it's wrong, or middle name or initial. Now there's a middle initial involved. Is immaterial. Now it goes on right after that it says the legal name of an individual. Why are they differentiating between a common law legal name and an individual legal name? Because they're different. It says the legal name of an individual consists of a given or baptismal name, usually assumed at birth, and a surname deriving from the common name of the parents. Do they use middle name anywhere? Does it have to be in the middle then? Without the insertion of the word middle name, can a baptismal name fall outside of the middle? Of course it can. I'm just trying to get you to think of all the different potentials. When somebody says a legal name, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because an individual name is different than a legal name, or the legal name of an individual is different. Protective order. Any order or decree of a court whose purpose is to protect a person from further harassment or service of process or discovery. Or discovery. Or discovery. When you hear the word discovery, so they're protecting something from discovery. To discover something. To unearth something, to dig it up, to find it. One man's trash from discovery. In fact, they're not even allowing for discovery. How many courts I don't know how many times you guys have been in court, but discovery is the key to everything. That's where treasure trover comes in. And that is the discovery of the afterbirth. It's the discovery of the document that evidences no claim. Abandoned material, that's the discovery. Oh, look what we found. Well, now it's subject to administrative process. We just discovered it. So it's protection from discovery. They're not allowing discovery. Protection. Okay, the scope of the protection of industrial property includes patents, utility models, industrial designs and models, trademarks, commercial names, and indications of origin. That sounds exactly like the birth record. Or appellations of origin. It sounds like a birth name or a name at the beginning. As well as the repression of unfair competition. I do want to do one word here, because model, the concept of a model. Because when I hear the word model, well, you'll see. Model. Because there's all kinds of weird laws or UCC acts on models. A model. By the way, I hope you see the afterbirth of the DNA in here. Model. A preliminary pattern or representation of something to be made or something already made. A facsimile of something invented, made on a reduced scale. And that sounds like the Corian. It's a model of me. A reduced scale, mini-me, for crying out loud. Or it's reduced even more to words. An arrangement of words. Curtis Richard Kallenbach is also a model or an arrangement that identifies something in a reduced scale. If you look at it, I'm 190 pounds. If I don't claim the Corian, they can drag my 190-pound ass in on 3 little words, Curtis Richard Kallenbach. Man, if that's not a reduced scale, I don't know. On a reduced scale, in compliance with the patent laws, style or design of product or item. Also see sample. So a model is also considered a sample. Let's just go to sample real quick. I'm going to get back to model real quick, but I want to see sample because I don't want to lose this train of thought. Sample. Now remember, when they do discovery, what are they looking for? Oh, they're not looking for anything. Sample. LM. A specimen. A small quantity of any commodity presented for inspection or examination as evidence of the quality of the whole. Does that not sound like the DNA? As a sample of cloth or the wheat. Cloth. You know, somebody told me something really interesting. He was here last summer. And he said that his mother, when he was born, yeah, he and I are the same age, or he's a year older than me. But his mom said, yeah, they took the afterbirth and they wrapped it in cloth. I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Almost like, something biblical. A shroud. I mean, a man of the cloth implies things. It also would be suitable, something made out of cloth. Is it possible that cloth is wool that could be pulled over your eyes to make you believe something that's not true? Okay, sample. A small quantity of any commodity presented for inspection or examination as evidence of the quality of the whole, which would be me. But it says as evidence of the quality of the whole. So if they're using the remains, the afterbirth material, that's defective. So if they're using that defective chorion, the defective product, as evidence of the quality of the whole, I'm defective. And if I'm defective, I have no legal capacity. They're using the sample as evidence of the quality of the whole, and I am the rest of it. I am the whole. So when they look at that defective product, they're saying that that man is defective, thus he has no legal capacity. And, of course, the only thing they have is the afterbirth because the record itself identifies that material. It doesn't identify me. I have never claimed that. Curtis Richard Kallenbach, again, is a title. It's a title to something left behind, the remains, the remainder. It is not me. It's not baby. Baby's a product of mom and dad. You got to remember that when I pull the chorion to me by my claim through Minnesota Rule 220, I'm revesting. It says I'm revesting the title in me. But if I don't do that, the title stays with the afterbirth material, but the afterbirth material is going to be maternal. And that's where the church comes in and says, oh, yeah, we own all that X material, that X chromosome stuff. Mitochondrial DNA is what? I call it the Holy Grail because it's the chalice that basically has the bloodline of what I call Mary, the church itself, which is mother to mother to mother to mother, or mother to daughter, mother to daughter, mother to daughter. That's the church's claim. Model. Back to model. Style or design of product or item. Style. Remember that upper and lowercase is a style. All caps is a style. Don't get lost in that stuff. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is something going on the internet about all caps. It's called this dog Latin or dog style or something like that. Dogma. Don't get lost in that garbage. It's not relevant. It's not relevant. Model Act. This is what really bothered me because I know that all the statutes, all these things, the UCC and all this stuff. Look at statute, Model Act. Statute proposed by the National Conference of Commissioners of Uniform State Laws for adoption by state legislatures, e.g., Model Business Corporation Act, Model Penal Code, Model Probate Code. Frequently, the state adopting the Model Act will modify it to some extent to meet its own needs or may adopt only a portion of such. Adopt. It says, the state adopting the Model Act. The state, it's lowercase state. They're not talking about what you think they are at this point. The state adopting the Model Act. How was, in 1965, Curtis Richard Kallenbach delivered? I jokingly said this years ago, but Curtis Richard Kallenbach, the registered vessel, was delivered to my parents' house by Stork. What uniform does the Stork wear? He wears the Postal Service uniform. That's the Stork. That child is delivered to the house by Stork, and then what do? We invite or adopt that child. We bring it into our own home, and we adopt that child through our ignorance. But that child is delivered by Stork, the U.S. Postal Service. What's really funny is to watch that animation that came out earlier this year or last year called Storks. It's all about babies, and there's a lot of good information in that movie. Model. Let's go back to this. It says models, trademarks, commercial names. Industrial property is to be understood in the broadest meaning, and is to be applied not only to industry and commerce. Industry and commerce. And let's read the first paragraph of commerce real quick. By the way, remember that the word "and" legally can mean or, industry or commerce. And or are you can interchange those. Commerce is going to be probably too big. I'm not going to read it all. I just want to read it, the very first paragraph. Commerce. Maybe it's not real big. Commercial units. Commerce. It is too big. But I'm going to read the first one. It says the exchange of goods, productions, or property of any kind. The buying, selling, and exchanging of articles. We went over articles last week, but it says the exchange of goods. Did we trade something for something else without knowing it? It says the transportation of persons and property by land. The transportation of persons and property by land, water, and air. The transportation, transport, across the port. The transport of persons and property by land, water, and air. Personal property. Persons and property. The reason I'm going over it like that, and I'm not going to read any more of commerce, is because the idea of transportation, now the Department of Transportation is back in the idea of department, which I went over earlier tonight. So let's just look at transportation real quick because it's something most people don't ever really think about. By the way, I was reading a novel about 4 years ago, I think, maybe longer, maybe 6 years ago at this point. Wow, time flies. And it was by Bernard Cornwell, and it was called Gallows Pole. And I'm reading, it's a historical fiction novel, and I read something about transportation. They gave the guy that's about to be hung the option. You can either die at the gallows, you can die hanging by the neck, or you can choose the other penalty called transportation. Transportation, as soon as I heard that, I went, wow, that's a really weird thing because the Department of Transportation is what actually issues licenses. So I went and looked up transportation in black because that's what I do. And, of course, it says the movement of goods or persons from one place to another by a carrier. Interstate Commerce Commission, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, I knew that. I knew that's pretty much what it was. Criminal law. Transportation is a species of punishment consisting in removing the criminal from his own country to another, usually a penal colony, there to remain in exile for a prescribed period. See, I know that the afterbirth character, the afterbirth person, is being transported, is being exiled. If we don't claim that, it becomes a bastard. It becomes a criminal. It becomes everything we don't know it to be. Remember I said that because it has no form, it has no shape, they can put a label on it, and it can become anything they need it to be. I mean, the criminals in England used to be transported to what? Australia. That was the punishment called transportation, and all those bad guys got dropped off in Australia. I know there's a couple of Australian guys listening right now. Way to choose transportation. But transportation, it says, a species of punishment consisting in removing the criminal. Remember, when Mom signs that document, she's literally pointing a finger at that waste material on the floor, and she signs it as an informant. And that information is an accusation. You got to picture Mom standing over the afterbirth material, pointing an accusatory finger, because she's an informant. She's saying, that is not my legitimate child. And it says a species of punishment consisting in removing the criminal from his own country. In other words, they take this, they remove this child. They exile it. It says remain in exile. Remains. The remains in exile. Consisting of removing the criminal from his own country. Like I said, we never actually get to the United States of America because we're claiming this other position that has been exiled. The afterbirth position is in exile. It's a fatherless bastard child in exile. Or removed to Rome, where the church gets to watch over that child of God. Doesn't matter where it's taken, but it's definitely not here. It says, removing the criminal from his own country to another, usually a penal colony. We should probably read a little Kafka. Usually a penal colony, there to remain in exile for a prescribed period. A prescribed. What's a scribe? A writer, an author, a prescribed, something that has been written in advance. A prescribed period. I think of it almost as like sort of a weird purgatory. Until you get your shit together, until you know what's happening, you're going to be stuck there. You can either look at it as like the movie Papillon, or you can look at it like Gilligan's Island. But either way, you're not here. The ship's aground on the shore of this uncharted desert island. Again, back to Sailor. We're going to see all that in a couple weeks. Let's see. It says the term patents includes the various types of industrial patents granted by the laws of the contracting countries, such as patents of importation. That's going to show up next week, by the way. Improvement patents. Think about it. Did I improve, or did I improve the waste material? The chorion is this thing over here, and it can't do a whole lot. But if I go out and I create things, did I improve the position of that other thing? Or is it reversed? Is the chorion able to lay claim to what I go out and do? Is either one of those positions greater than the position of the true waste material, which is maternal afterbirth? And then I want to, and right here, certificates of addition. I don't know if there's such a thing called a certificate of addition, but I know the word addition. I'm going to go to certificates real quick to see if there is a certificate of addition. Let's see. Certificate. Certificate of deposit. There's no certificate of addition, but a certificate is a written assurance or official representation that some act has or has not been done. You know, by the way, it's funny, it has or has not been done. A certificate exists because something has or has not been done. The certificate, I always thought of the certificate, the birth record, or the certificate of record, the birth certificate. I always thought of that as something that evidences, it's more like a, what are they called? When you have a bunch of stuff that you're broke and you take your property into one of those places, what are they called? I can't remember something that simple. Pawn shop. I always think of the stuff left behind as being pawned. I always think of the certificate itself as being the sort of like your receipt to what has been pawned. And when you come back and you do a proper claim, I mean, the reality is you don't really turn it in, but you do lay claim to the property. And now the certificate is basically redeemed. That's the whole redemption process. The idea of redeeming yourself from the pits of hell or from this ridiculous system, the redemption itself is you no longer being a certificated person or being lost, presumed dead, missing, lost at sea, or any of that crap. So when you do what you need to do through Minnesota 220, the certificated person goes away, and you're revested with your title. So it's almost like a redemption of the of that certificate. You take the certificate in, and you get your stuff back. Oh, by the way, I'm home. Hey, by the way, I can pay back what I got from you, and I need my stuff back. I need my father's watch back, the one that was pawned. My father's watch, i.e. his name. I need my father's stuff back. Thank you very much. Here's the certificate. It says the certificate is what? A written assurance or official representation. In other words, it's not the real thing. It represents the real thing. So to me, it's almost exactly like a receipt. I tried to actually give it back once, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to lay claim to the living side of it, and then the certificate just dissolves away. That's how I look at it. Also, when we get into the other property down the road in a week or so, you're going to see that there's a case called Eads versus Brazelton. And I'm not letting the cat out of the bag because it's a hard case to find. But Eads is EADS versus Brazelton. And what it is it's a shipwreck case, or it's a salvage case. And what happens is you'll realize that the ship itself is the very thing that redeems you. You need all of this stuff to never be lost in the waters at sea forever. So Eads versus Brazelton, it'd be really nice if somebody could find that case somewhere and post it in the Dropbox, because that's a tough case to find. I found a lot of references to that case all over the place, and they're up at P-Cloud right now. But Eads versus Brazelton, if you can see it, you're actually going to see what the Savior really is, who the Savior really is. You're going to see your salvation, and you're going to see that it's in your hands, should you decide to accept that mission. Let's keep going a little bit. I'm going to try to certificate. The word is addition, and that's what I'm going to close up with, the word addition tonight. I know I went over it earlier about 2 weeks ago, but let me go to addition again, because it's important to see how all this stuff keeps connecting. Addition implies physical contact, something added to another. It's an addition. Is it possible that I can be added to the Chorion? Is that an addition to the Chorion? For the administrators, that's the way they want it. They got a claim upon this afterbirth material, which is maternal and fetal, and as long as they have the claim upon the fetal, they also have the additional claim upon me. Well, how can they do that, Kurt? It's because I don't have a name at that point. I can't claim Curtis Richard Kalamak because it's not for me to claim. So I'm out there as a nobody. Nobody. I am nobody. I am nobody. And so the administrators pull me in and say, yeah, you will do this. And they win every single time because of it. Because I have no way to prove who I am. Because the very title of that position is in the hands of the administrators. Because I have not proved life. Therefore, I was never revested with my title. Addition implies physical contact, something added to another, structure physically attached to or connected with building itself. An extension, increase, augmentation, that which has become united with or a part of, that which has become united with or a part of. I would call that joinder. So until I do a legitimate claim upon that Chorion through a Minnesota Rule 220, I am out there. When they pull me into the courtroom through the service of process or a cop pulling me in or something happening, they're going to get a reunification or a uniting of me with that afterbirth material. They're going to get joinder. I can't prove who I am. They have, through their discovery, everything they need to hang me with. Because all of the afterbirth property at this point is called res nullius. It's unowned. No owner. They discover that there's no owner. Hey, look at this. There's nobody that owns this property. And then you go right back to the Bar Association where their number one job is to do what? Locate intellectual property, which in my case would be Curtis Richard Kallenbach, a title that is unclaimed. And, of course, the title goes over what material? It goes over the maternal afterbirth and the chorion. So when they have access to the title, they have access to me and everything I've ever produced. Addition. In insurance law, the word addition as applied to buildings usually means a part added or joined to a main building. Though the term has also been held to apply to buildings appurtenant to some other building, though not actually in physical contact therewith. In other words, you got to think of the title. Appurtenance, in common law, whatever was added to a man's name by way of title or description. In English law, there were 4 kinds of additions. Additions of estate, such as yeoman, gentleman, esquire. Additions of degree, or names of dignity, as knight, earl, marquis, duke. Additions of trade, mystery, or occupation. We already went through that tonight. As scrivener, there's your writer, scrivener, subscribe. Painter, mason, carpenter, and additions of place of residence as London, Chester, etc., or the District of Columbia. I put that in because that's the same thing. They leave out everything so you can't see it. Additional. This term embraces the idea of joining or uniting one thing to another so as to thereby form one aggregate, which is where we started tonight, the word aggregate. Aggregate. That's where we started. Okay. So, 10 o'clock. By the way, the reason I took so much time on Article 1 is because industrial property is the key to everything. It's not, I mean, we're going to move through these other articles a little bit quicker, but industrial property is the key to everything. When you understand the capital and labor of your life, the very wealth, the aggregate of everything you ever produce, falls within the industrial property. And what they did in 1883 is they created a legal term that allowed them to lay claim to something. In other words, the raw material of your life, the afterbirth, is the raw material from which everything else you do. The title of the raw material is Curtis Richard Kallenbach in my case. And if they have the claim upon the raw material, they also have the claim upon everything that raw material produces, both intellectually and physically, and genetically, by the way, my son. So you can see how damaging this is. It is extremely damaging, and we need to claim this stuff. Anyway, so I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Sorry I was so sniffly, but I will be better tomorrow. I'm taking lots of silver, and I won't be blue. All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.
Very good. Good night, Curtis.
Good night.